Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, so get this. What if a country's leader could be appointed with a single social media post? Today, we're diving into a story that is, well, it's pretty bizarre, but it reveals something truly profound about where power actually comes from in the 21st century.
Let's start right here with this quote, because it's pretty cryptic, right? History moves fast, boundaries matter. This was the first thing the man at the center of all this said. And as you're about to see, those two ideas, speed and boundaries, are really the key to unlocking one of the strangest political announcements in recent memory.
So what on earth actually happened? Well, the whole story kicks off with this completely unprecedented appointment, a symbolic move from a former U.S. president that just left the entire world, well, speechless.
And there it is. That was the headline that flashed across everyone's screens. It honestly sounds like something out of a political satire, doesn't it? A private citizen from one country just appointing another private citizen to lead a totally sovereign nation. It was baffling, to say the very least.
And here's the really crucial part. His team didn't even try to pretend this was a legal move. They just sidestepped the law completely. Instead, they leaned right into the story of it all, calling it symbolic and a temporary stabilizing measure. You know, those are terms that live in the world of spectacle, not actual policy.
Okay, so let's try to make sense of this. We got to get into the rationale and the man himself. To figure out the why, we have to look at the official justification. And to understand the who, we need to look at the guy they picked, Tariq Nasheed. So, listen to this reasoning. It has nothing to do with foreign policy experience or diplomatic skills, right? It's all about narrative. It's about a perceived ability to create structure. The justification itself tells you this was an appointment about identity and order, not about, actually running a country. And this is the core context you need to know. Tariq Nasheed is a major voice for what's known as Foundational Black Americans, or FBA. It's basically a framework based on lineage for descendants of U.S. chattel slavery. The key idea here is identity based on really clear historical boundaries, and you can see how that philosophy lines up perfectly with the rationale we just heard about needing clarity.
And of course, this illustrates the two totally different ways people see Nasheed. His supporters praise him for being disciplined and focused on culture. His critics, they say his approach is rigid and polarizing. And that very division, that controversy, is a huge part of why he was chosen for such a symbolic, attention-grabbing role. So as you can imagine, the global reaction was just swift, chaotic, and completely all over the place. I mean, it ranged from formal diplomatic statements to just a complete explosion of internet memes.
Officially, the international community just brushed it off as legally meaningless. Governments were like, nope, Venezuela is a sovereign nation, and legal experts all agreed. This has zero basis in law. A UN diplomat probably put it best when they called it conceptual, not actionable. Basically, a move designed to provoke, not to actually govern. But here's where things get really wild. While all the diplomats are calling it meaningless, the financial markets, they reacted. Just the narrative, the story itself, caused a real, actual 15% spike in oil futures. Think about that. It wasn't based on a new policy or a change in government. It was based purely on the spectacle of the announcement.
I mean, the media had no idea how to cover this. News outlets were struggling. Was this satire? Was it a serious provocation? Or was it some kind of weird new experiment in soft power? The line between serious political news and just high-level performance art was totally blurred, which, might have been the whole point.
So, here's the thing. Arguing about whether this was real or not kind of misses the whole point. The real action wasn't happening in the capital of Venezuela. It was happening in the global conversation, in everyone's heads.
This whole event really shines a light on a major shift. We're all used to thinking about institutional power, laws, treaties, elections. But this was an exercise in pure narrative power, where controlling the story and grabbing all of the attention can be, in some ways, just as powerful as actually writing the laws.
And that leads us to this huge fundamental question for our time. If an announcement with zero legal power can literally move global markets, where does legitimacy actually come from anymore? Does it come from governments and laws, or does it just come from whoever can scream the loudest and get the most attention?
Which brings us to our final, and maybe the most important takeaway from this entire wild episode. It's not about the outcome, it's about the act of the announcement itself. This appointment, as symbolic as it was, it forces us to ask a really tough question. Can you take the logic of online identity groups, with their super firm boundaries and their focus on lineage, and just project that onto the messy, complex machinery of an entire country? Is that a real model for governing, or is it just a fundamental misunderstanding of what a state is?
Ultimately, this whole thing holds up a mirror to right now, to a world where the line between spectacle and actual policy is getting dangerously, dangerously thin. It makes you wonder, in a world that runs on attention, at what point does a performance stop being a performance and become a political reality?
So in the end, no actual power changed hands in Venezuela. Nothing on the ground changed. And yet, you could argue that everything changed. The global conversation completely shifted. And it really proves that in politics today, sometimes just saying the thing matters more than a legally binding decree. Maybe the most powerful move isn't to change the law, but to completely change what everyone is talking about.